So, welcome everyone to today's webinar, Patch Smarter, Not Harder, Modernizing Third-Party Updates. This webinar is brought to you by Remo 3. My name is Misty Scott, and I am pleased to be your moderator today. I'm very excited to introduce our speakers. Mike Bruce is our Director of Sales Americas, who brings over 25 years of sales leadership from major global tech players. And not only that, but he also coaches rugby, so he can tackle any challenge both on and off the field. Ricky Patel is our Customer Solutions Engineer, our go-to expert for tuning product complexity into customer confidence. With a knack for translating technical jargon into business value, he ensures clients not only on board, but actually get it. All right. And before we dive in, you probably see the poll questions that have popped up on your screen. If you could take a moment just to answer those, we will reveal these results at the end of the webinar. All right, Ricky and Bruce, Mike Bruce, thank you so much for joining us today. And I think, Mike, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Misty, and welcome everybody to Patch Smarter Remo 3 webinar. As Misty mentioned, my name is Mike Bruce. So what we're going to cover today is when it comes to your Windows applications and all of the updates and patches that you have to navigate, how to do all of that and save time, how to do it and improve your security, reduce your risk, implement a stronger compliance policy for your organization. And at the end of the day, it's all about fewer end user, your customers, disruptions and outages. Our point of view comes from, well, me personally, I've been in the end user space, application management space since about 2004. So there's some historical and current points of view that I'll share. We're on these types of calls pretty much all day, every day, workday wise. But it also comes from our customers, our prospects, our partner base, as well as subject matter experts. So the first challenge that folks are faced with when it comes to Windows applications is really there's too much change happening. So I ask on pretty much every call, how many updates or new versions of applications do you expect to handle in a 12-month period? And the answer that I generally see is between 4 and 8. So when you start adding up that amount of change, it becomes almost insurmountable, right? If you have 100 applications, that's 400 to 800 changes that you have to navigate in a year. And that doesn't even really include your custom apps, your homegrown applications. So at the end of the day, IT just can't keep up. And what ends up happening is end user computing groups are really forced to choose between two different options. One is a risk-based deployment or push and pray. Boy, I'm going to send this out and I hope it doesn't cause harm. Or you become the judge, where you have to balance security updates and patches and whether or not an end user or a department in your company gets the technology they need to innovate and keep your company competitive. One of the other questions I ask on almost every call is, are you validating, are you certifying every change before you send it out into your environment? The most common response that I receive is no, but we should be. The risk with these patches is very real. You don't have to go too far back to remember headlines where an untested application patch was deployed and caused massive amounts of harm across almost all companies in the world, right? So this is a very real risk that companies are facing. And a lot of our clients just don't have the luxury of avoiding the validation process for each change that they're deploying. And when you start adding in that companies are deploying these Windows applications to operating systems, and those change all the time. And you may have more than one environment, like a physical environment and a virtual environment. It becomes a huge amount of change, which brings me to my next point. So since about 2004, I've been in this space, end user computing and application management. One of the things that always surprises me on each of my current calls is that automation just hasn't quite hit until now the end user space and really the application management space. And if you looked around at all the other departments inside your company or groups, finance, sales, etc., right? Automation has definitely hit their departments and the platforms that they use, but it hasn't quite hit in the end user application management space. And so we're going to talk about how Remo 3 can inject automation and really modernize your application practice in just a moment when I turn it over to Ricky. The last point I wanted to make is that most of the folks that we talk to are either on Intune already or they're going to Intune. We work with a lot of companies that are co-managed, which is kind of a little bit of both. So when it comes to Intune, which is great, the reporting falls a little bit short. Okay. So the reason it falls short is that it's not available out of the box. And for a company to implement their own reporting in Intune, it requires an Intune expert, which can be hard to find. They have to navigate graph. Then you have to get a Power BI expert. And then you put all that together, and then you're trying to mature or iterate that reporting as time goes by. So it's a very manual and intensive exercise for companies to go to. But our hero, the end user computing team at these companies, they really struggle with lack of visibility, right? So I need real time or near real time reporting on what's happening in my environment. I need trend analysis so I could see how things are going month after month. And I need to be able to find patch deployment failures and go from here's a failure all the way down to it failed for this user on this device and it was this patch. And then I need to know why it failed and go back to the application. And again, very, very manual exercise for companies to go through. And now I'd like to turn it over to Ricky, who's going to introduce Remo 3. You are on mute, Ricky.
There we go. Thanks, Mike. Hopefully everyone can see my screen okay. So let me take you all on a bit of a journey, and it's the Remo 3 automation workflow. So to Mike's points there, the idea of what we do is to make your lives as easy as possible so you can focus on more strategic, more innovative options for your environments. So the workflow very much starts with onboarding your applications, and applications could be onboarded in a few different ways. We can onboard from integrations with Config Manager, manually upload applications into the platform, use things like application capture for those more complex applications, or equally, we can add trackers to your application vendors and pull your applications from those locations as well. In a similar way to how many of you may do third-party patching, we also have our own application catalog, allowing you to do things like onboard or subscribe to applications should you require it. So the journey very much starts with taking those applications from any of those sources, being able to apply those applications to your existing operating system, and not only install, but also monitor the metrics from an application performance perspective, making sure that we understand what good looks like today. So that very much kind of breaks that down into application import, discovery to understand the moving components of those applications, and doing a baseline test of those apps, making sure we're able to launch those apps successfully without being prompt for a .NET 3.5 error as a prerequisite is missing. What that allows us to do is take those applications, knowing that they are working at the moment, to be able to test those against multiple different scenarios, and that could be for your Windows 11 Future 25 H2 build, maybe if you're heading in a direction of Windows 365, or equally other options towards virtual infrastructure such as AVD, single session, or multi-session, allowing us to use automation to get you to your end results as quickly as possible, as to yes, application A, B, and C are going to pass successfully, but applications X, Y, and Z have all failed for various types of reasons. As we head into the platform, I'll be able to demonstrate how we capture that information. But just at a very high level at the moment, we capture that information in a console view, in a video format, and equally in screenshots as well. So based on applications passing that process and successfully working, we can then convert those applications into an MSIX format to be used in maybe more of those virtual instances, or equally into an Intune Win format, allowing us to then get those applications into Intune. The direction could be that simply I want the application to be pushed into Intune and I want to assign those applications out there. Or for some of those more complex applications, I may want to do things like facilitated UAT. The way that we start to bridge that data together, so not just from a application migration or assessment perspective, but also bridging that gap into the world of Intune, is we start to provide you with options to optimize, comply, and report on that data within that platform, allowing you to do things like make more data-driven decisions or to support you from a change management process. So by taking those components and any future updates after you've onboarded an application for the first time, it allows us to then synchronize that all together. So the next time an application vendor releases a new update, we're then able to push this back through our process, make sure you've got the confidence that it's going to work against your custom build successfully. So we'll head into the platform now, and we'll very much start at the beginning of what what Mike was referring to a moment ago. So, like you can see on the screen at the moment, it's very much our Remo 3 patch catalog. We can see a number of applications on the screen with the opportunity to either scroll down or head to multiple other tabs. For the purpose of this demo, I'll just pick the Adobe Acrobat Reader application, like you can see here, and I'll simply just click on Select Version. This would link directly into your Remo 3 instance. And as per my diagram a moment ago, we can then also see the pipeline actions of how far through the Remo process would you like to take your application on. So there's two options here, and one of them is to onboard an application for the first time and the one and only time, and that could be I simply want this version of Adobe Acrobat Reader imported into the Remo platform to give me the confidence and then export it out into Intune. Or I might want to subscribe to an application, meaning that it will onboard this existing version. And every time Adobe releases a newer version of Acrobat Reader, it'll add a tracker in. So the next time a new release comes in, it'll then cycle through the processes that we've defined. So by clicking on and selecting Export to Intune, the activities that will be carried out are import, discover, onboard, and on successful validation of the application installing and launching on your custom build, you'll then automatically export the application out into Intune, making it available for you to be able to deploy to your end users. So what this looks like from a back-end perspective for an application I did earlier today is in the Remo platform, this version that we were just looking at a moment ago, you can see it here that it's starting to step through the processes of importing, discovery, baseline, and then eventually onboarding. So as part of that process, import would allow you to have the confidence that the applications you're working with are secure. So we'll do things like an anti-malware scan, making sure we've got the confidence that we're working with safe data. We'll then begin the journey of discovery, and that would be to provision a virtual machine, take your custom operating system, and then apply the application to that. like you can see in this console view, we are tracking all the moving parts of what's changing on the operating system as Adobe is being installed. We can also capture that within a video format as to what is being displayed on the end user screen. Why is there a PowerShell window that's appearing as part of this installation process? And is there a modification that we need to make to the application in order for it to install in more of a silent view? We can see here that at the end of that installation, we do now have the Adobe Acrobat Reader application on the desktop. But if I wanted to get to that end result just quickly, I can then head to the Output tab, and that will then show me a screenshot of the Adobe Acrobat Reader on the desktop. From that application performance metrics perspective, we can also head across to the Performance tab, and then we can start to see how launching or installing this application at this stage is impacting that virtual machine. What this allows us to do by doing that discovery is capture a whole host of information from the application publisher, things like the logo of the application, where the application is being stored within Azure, the installation and the uninstallation command lines that are being used to either install or uninstall the application, the context that the application is being installed in. And then in relation to any exit codes, you can go ahead and edit any of these components as well. But just swiftly heading down further into this application package details, we can then start to see all the executables and shortcuts that are actually applied to the operating system beyond just that core executable that you launch in order to get into the application. It could be that you add customizations to different types of applications. We can go ahead and select which components of the application we want to launch. And in this scenario, I'm simply just selecting that under my smoke test, which is that launch test, I just want to be able to run the Adobe launcher. I can head back over into dashboards and into the overview tab, and then we'll be able to have a look here that the baseline test is just completed. And in a similar scenario to what we just saw for installation, we'll go ahead, provision a virtual machine, install the intended application, and then launch that component of the app to understand what happens to the operating system when that change occurs, and if there's any prerequisites missing that we may have missed earlier on. So again, for this step, we capture in a console, a video format, and an output. But if I swiftly head through this video of this, we can then start to see that when the Adobe Acrobat application is launched, we're then prompted by this view. And it could be that we want to head into the application to make some amendments, like I mentioned previously, to make sure these pop-ups do not appear for our end users, and maybe the user acceptance component is already pre-approved for them. So the journey very much comes to a point of the application has gone through import, discovery, baseline, and onboarded successfully. As per the patch catalog, we selected for the application to be exported into Intune. So let's continue the journey from that stage. Just move this over. Perfect. So once your application is then in Intune, we can then take advantage of our Boost extension. So like you can see here on the right-hand side, we have a Remo 3 icon, which is very much an extension to my browser. This is available for either your Google Chrome browser, your Chromium Edge browser, and is logged into using the same credentials you use to log into your Intune instance. It will appear when you head over to the Apps section within Intune, and by simply clicking on the icon, it will then bring up my data from my Intune environment. It'll then allow me to see information in regards to the Adobe Acrobat application itself, and allow me to do a few moving parts with it, such as cleanup, deployment, or new phase deployments. The data is all being relayed through using Microsoft Graph APIs. So for this certain application that we've been working with in the backend, I can then see here within the extension that I have more visibility as to the Remo 3 package details within my Intune view. So we can see here that for this application version, we're pulling the data from that Remo platform, allowing us to see and understand what's being checked within here, such as it's successfully launching on Windows 10, 11 for our confidence for AVD, single session and multi-session. If we've done any additional components to the application, such as convert it into different formats, but giving us the confidence by selecting that it's verified by Remo, that it's been tested against your target operating systems. At this stage, we could do a few things, and by browsing into the application list, I can select this application or multiple applications as they are being released or removed for previous versions. But we'll start with cleanup. So in the scenario that these 6 applications are due to have newer versions in the next week, I may want to remove the assignments within Intune of these applications. And by simply selecting them in this view and clicking on the cleanup tab over here, I can then provide it with a name and either choose to remove assignments to those 6 applications either immediately, to schedule them in the future, or for it to be manual. I'll schedule this in for maybe later next week. I can create that phase, and then an assignment will be carried out in the background to remove all assignments to those 6 groups of applications. This will save you from having to do things like repetitive tasks of going into each of those applications one by one, and then having a look at the assignments and removing any assignments for those applications. But in other scenarios, when we've now got newer versions of applications in place, it could be that we want to bulk deploy certain applications to groups of individuals. So by selecting these 4 applications in this scenario, I can then click on New Deployment. So selecting those 4 applications, picking who I want the applications to go to, and this is very much pulling the list from your Entra ID groups. Maybe I want it to be deployed to the IT team, and I can select on Next, review the configuration details, choose whether I want it to be required, available, or uninstall. If I am setting any parameters such as assignment modes or filters, then I can go ahead and specify those too. And how do I want the end user notifications to be? Would I like to show all of them, just the ones for restart, or none at all? And I can simply select that I want it to be installed in the device's time zone. By saving those components, I can then filter through, just make sure I'm reviewing the configuration sets before I go ahead and click on deploy. But the moment I click on deploy, the assignments will be added in place for the IT group to be added to those 4 applications, meaning I'm not having to go into those 4 applications one by one and adding the assignments in there. For some of you that will be interested in things like phase deployment, so instead of getting the latest and greatest version of Adobe Acrobat Reader and then pushing out to the whole organization, I may want to phase this application across multiple groups on different dates. So I can select this application, I can then click on New Phase Deployments, and I can start to build up my phases of phase 1 to be deployed immediately, and I want it to be deployed immediately to the retail group. I can click on Next, add those components like we did previously, and then click on Save. I can then start to build out my next phases, and that could be for phase 2 to be deployed on the same date as previously, so the 13th. Create that phase, and then again on that scheduled date, I can select which groups I would like the application to be deployed to. So in order for me to do that, I'll just click on Device Time Zone, click on Save, and then Next, review that configuration for those phases of phase 1 and 2, and then simply click on Deploy. And now things have been pre-scheduled in the future, allowing for us to then monitor to understand how successful phase 1 is. Do we want to pause the deployment before it gets to phase 2, or is there anything that we want to be able to have a look at? So the next and final part from my side of things is very much from a reporting aspect, and very much from any things like NIST or CVEs could concern any security and compliance teams. So we've built out dashboards to be able to bring you that information to understand how many devices are impacted by maybe certain CVEs being put in place. So using our Clarity reporting dashboards, we're then able to see applications within your environment that have CVEs, by clicking on total unique CVEs here in this paperclip icon that some of you may have seen in previous webinars. We can click into the paperclip icon, which is basically a drill down. So I can now see the impacted devices, the application publisher, the name, the version of the application that's been impacted, and the related CVE with any further information such as that description information. This could very much help organizations identify where problems are or where applications are creating security vulnerabilities for the organization, and giving you the opportunity to take maybe the Visual Studio application and redeploy the latest and greatest version using our patch catalog. The last couple of points on these dashboards, as we have gone through some of these previously, is very much from an application management perspective. So bringing in all the applications from your Intune environment, we're then able to see things like application deployment summaries about which applications installed successfully, failed, didn't install at all, or still in that pending installation state. We can then start to get an appreciation of how many applications were added into the Intune environment, and of those, how many were edited. And from those deployments and assignments that we may have done previously, there could be applications that are erroring for one reason or another. So bringing that information in, we're able to then see application installation errors and how many devices are being impacted by that error and what the error message is. And also from maybe a rationalization perspective, you may want to understand how many different types or versions of the same applications we have in place. So in my demo environment, unfortunately for me, I have multiple versions of 7-zip, and what I should really be doing is taking the latest version of 7-zip, removing the assignments to my devices within Intune, and getting the latest and greatest version out there. But hopefully that helps provide some clarity in regards to what we can do to support you from our patching process. Over to you, Brucey.
All right, thank you. Let me go ahead and take share back. All right. So if anybody has any questions, please drop them in the chat. We have a few minutes where we can address them. And then I think we may see the poll responses dropped in the chat as well. While we're waiting, as far as some action items for the attendees of this session, you can scan this QR code on the left, and that will take you to a book a meeting landing page where you can complete the form, add some information, and then schedule a meeting with us. That meeting could be, hey, I have a few questions I want to run by a Remo 3 expert. It could also be an introductory demonstration or a deep technical dive built specifically for you and the requirements that you're faced with. We have an upcoming webinar. It's a little bit less than 2 weeks from today. It's also Ricky and myself, aka the Dream Team. That one, the topic is all about getting off of SCCM and getting into Intune. And this is an action, a movement, a project type that Remo 3 gets involved with all the time. So we have some very good expertise and some information to share on that topic. But if you want, I believe you can click the register now, and that will take you there. If you're old school like me, you just go to remo3.com. From there, under the About tab, you will see upcoming events. And there's actually a whole bunch of webinars on a whole range of different topics that you can pick from and register for. If you end up registering for an event but can't make it, the recording will be available through that same remo3.com page once the event is over. And if you'd also like to reach out to us directly, you can use marketing@remo3.com. And then most of our marketing effort is replicated or announced through LinkedIn. So if you go on to LinkedIn, you're there a lot. Find us under Remo3 and then follow, and you'll have access to all of those different updates. And Ricky, there's a few, there's at least one question that popped in that,
Sure.
oh, there's a couple more now. Okay, so this one's an easy one, but I'm going to tee it up for you, Ricky.
Sure.
Are you ready?
Go on.
Okay. Does our tool, Remo 3, work for non-Windows, like Linux-based containers?
Yeah, sure. So the Remo platform doesn't actually support Linux devices. However, from a non-Windows perspective, definitely from a clarity perspective, so from that reporting set, we are definitely pulling all the information across from your Intune environment. So if there's data within Intune, the reporting component will support for it. But at the moment, from an application perspective, migration and patching, it is very much Windows.
Thank you. Okay, we're on to the next one. How does automating third-party patching actually help save time for IT teams?
For sure. So, I guess automating the patching process can eliminate repetitive manual tasks like things that I demonstrated, such as testing, packaging, validating of those applications, with the aim that using automation, we're able to free up valuable time for IT teams to be able to do more of those strategic initiatives.
Great. Great. Okay. All right, here's the next one. How can automation reduce user disruptions during patch deployments?
Yeah. Okay. So, I guess using automation again, the patch rollout can be phased, tested, scheduled at optimal times, making sure that we're minimizing the amount of downtime. We've built in those validation steps as well to ensure that patches do not cause any negative impact to end users, and being able to use that boost extension to be able to make fewer deployments and save clicking on applications 15 times to add an assignment to them.
Great. Okay, here's a question. Our company uses ServiceNow. Is it possible to connect Remo 3 with ServiceNow?
Right. Yeah, so you definitely can. So using the Remo 3 APIs, you can definitely drive the Remo 3 backend using ServiceNow. You could initiate adding a new package into the platform from a ServiceNow ticket. And we've also worked with a number of clients being able to report that data back in. So creating additional tasks within ServiceNow to show that applications have passed the import, discovery, baseline, and export processes.
Great. Excellent. Okay. I'm just trying to read it so I don't muckle it up.
Sure.
All right. Yeah. How easy is it to get started with Remo 3 patching catalog?
Yeah, so very easy. So as per our previous webinar, there's two platforms at play. So we can either have a PaaS platform or a SaaS platform. From a PaaS side of things, it very much comes down to any prerequisites that may be involved from yourselves to put in place. Or from a SaaS side of things, it is a lot more simpler to implement, and we can turn that on within an hour of, I guess, getting the thumbs up.
Great. Thank you very much. And so that's it. Those are all the questions. Feel free. We just have another couple minutes. If you have a question, you're holding it, feel free to drop it in the chat.
Sure.
One other thing that I did want to point out, if you go to the remo3.com page, all of our technology is available for evaluation. Some of it is self-guided, where we will help you get up and running, and then we can coach you from there. Some of it's a little bit more involved, like the workspace automation engine, but you can feel free to submit either the book a meeting, which is available for attendees today only, or on the website, there's other contact us and book a demo pages that you can complete. And then there's an email address here that you can use to connect with us. And please take a moment and look through under on the remo3.com page under about and then upcoming events. You can not only browse the webinar topics that we have coming up, This one that Ricky and I are running is a little bit less than 2 weeks from today, but also the in-person events that we are attending. And those events can happen. There's a few that are coming up in the European area. We have some in North America. I think the very next one is in New York City in October, but there's other ones that we're going to be attending and exhibiting at. And we'll have all kinds of experts there, not only your business and sales focused experts, but also our technology team will be there. And we can really cover a whole myriad of topics that you might have. And if you reach out to us in advance, we'd be happy to perform some sort of custom type session just for you and your company, or the other attendees from your company that you're bringing to that in-person event. Oh, and the link is in the chat. Thank you very much, Misty. All right, Ricky, that's all I have for today.
Perfect. Thank you.
So yeah, on behalf of Ricky, Misty, and myself, thank you all very much for attending. We look forward to seeing you at the next one, and have a great day, everybody.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone.